Hi, I'm Owen Lockwood, and I'm here to present my work in defense of the paper for the ICLR 2021 workshop, Rethinking Machine Learning Papers. Machine learning as a field has exploded since 2012, largely driven by deep neural networks. Contemporary machine learning papers are often far from the pinnacle of inclusivity, explainability, and interpretability, leading to the desire for a new conceptualization of the research process that will help alleviate some of these problems. However, this idea fails to consider the problem as a whole, missing the forest for the trees. New formats will fail to meaningfully solve any of the existing problems in accessibility and inclusivity because they do not address the primary causes of these problems, which is not the workflow itself, but the misaligned incentives behind the workflow. These misaligned incentives simply manifest themselves as problems in papers, as papers are the basic unit of academic research, but these problems are not problems of the paper workflow itself. Only by addressing these misaligned incentives can we improve the field in the long term. Previous work has successfully identified a number of problems in the field, however, it fails to convey the mechanisms and reasonings behind these problems. Now we will outline 3 examples of misaligned incentives that decrease the goals of inclusivity and accessibility in machine learning papers. First, we have inclusivity problems. The publish or perish mentalities in machine learning decrease inclusivity, especially in machine learning where the expectation is to publish in all of the major conferences in your subfield per year, be it AAAI, NeurIPS, ICML, ICLR, ACL, ECCV, etc. This has a negative impact on both researchers, both in terms of the research that they do and the mental health of the research. And so these incentives provide exclusionary effects, which is not attributable to the paper workflow itself, merely manifests in that form. Second, we have explainability problems. Given the necessity of state-of-the-art results for empirical methods, we have a hyper-focus on small and unrealistic benchmarks. We have a focus on always getting better results, always getting state-of-the-art results, which often leads to a misattribution of improvements. What is done through effectively random hyperparameter search out of necessity because you need to have state-of-the-art results to be published is misattributed to theoretical foundations that are changed but aren't actually the source of the improvements. And this often leads to poor methodological practices such as harking or hypothesizing after results are known. So this incentive for state-of-the-art reduces the explainability of the paper. Thirdly, we have interpretability problems, specifically irrelevant or incorrect mathematics, or mathematics that is reliant on assumptions that cannot be applied to neural networks. And this is a result of the current expected paper format. Simply put, reviewers have no incentives to be good reviewers, and this reviewing process maintains the status quo of this. And this creates antagonistic relationships between reviewer and author, in which the author sees the reviewer as an obstacle to be overcome. And this interpretability problems also often carry false intuitions and understandings forward into other research projects. And so why not change? Here I argue that the paper is the optimal workflow because research production and research reception are on opposite sides of the workflow. Increasing the accessibility of the research often decreases the inclusivity of it, because requiring more non-research skills to have successful research publications increases the barriers of producing research and decreases the goals of inclusivity. The paper has the lowest requirements and is optimally inclusive because the only thing that is required is the ability to write, which is an implicit prerequisite for research. Granted, it has a low accessibility floor, and the fact that the many papers today are inaccessible and poorly written and do not effectively convey ideas doesn't mean that the paper itself is broken, because it is capable of expressing ideas, and it has an extremely high accessibility ceiling. Changing the incentives to reward explainability and increase accessibility are essential. Now we have a few short-term solutions. Keep hybrid conferences post-pandemic to enable researchers with less resources. Democratize compute resources. Long-term solutions rely on changing the incentives be it cultural changes such as slow science or required venue changes such as breaking apart conferences. Now, I don't have all the answers. You can go back and look at the solutions I presented, but this is something we need to come to as a community and agree on as a community, because that's the only way we'll effectively change. The point of this work was not to point out all the flaws or provide all of the answers, but to create discussion that hopefully results in changes. We all know these problems exist, so let's solve them. Make sure to read the paper where I explain everything more, and thank you for listening.